This is just a sample of the audiobook. To get the complete audiobook, access the link posted in the first comment.
On the evening of October 23, 1942, Lieutenant General Bernard Montgomery settled in for a good night's sleep. Montgomery later claimed that he retired to his caravan early, as was his habit, read a few pages from a novel, and sometime after 9 o'clock he went to sleep. If this was true, it was a remarkable display of calm, steely resolve and composure, given what was at stake. Earlier, Montgomery had written a personal message to be read to the men of his 8th Army that morning. Part of his message read, "When I assumed command of the 8th Army, I said that the mandate was to destroy Rommel and his army, and that it would be done as soon as we were ready. We are ready now. The battle which is now about to begin will be one of the decisive battles of history. It will be the turning point of the war. The eyes of the whole world will be on us, watching anxiously which way the battle will swing." Montgomery was in no doubt that the battle would swing his way. It was part of the reason he claimed to sleep so soundly that night. Earlier, he had dined with Lieutenant General Sir Oliver Leese, his 30 Corps commander. On learning that Leese intended to watch the opening barrage, timed for 9:40 p.m. that evening, Montgomery counseled against it. Leese recalled what Montgomery said to him. "My job," he said, "was to go to bed early, so as to appear fresh in the morning, and be able by my appearance to give confidence to the troops. I had then to be on top of my form, so as to accept the inevitable shocks of battle, and be able to plan quickly and soundly the next night's attacks." He could not have been more right. Montgomery may have been right, but Leese ignored his advice, and later moved to a slight ridgeline from which he could observe the opening barrage. It was the largest fired by the British Army in the war up to that time. But Montgomery, despite his claims, was also awake watching the barrage. His chief of staff, Brigadier Francis Freddie de Guingand, was at a vantage point on the coast road that night, and his notes on the battle make it clear that Montgomery was with him. And Montgomery recorded the event in his diary. The opening barrage was a wonderful sight, similar to a Great War 1914-18 attack. It was a still night and very quiet. Suddenly, the whole front burst into fire. It was beautifully timed, and the effect was terrific. Many large fires broke out in enemy gun areas. This was clearly not the dream of a slumbering army commander. It shows that Montgomery, despite what he wrote later, knew how important this battle was to the Allied war effort and to his own career. At 9:40 p.m., the artillery barrage opened right on time. The noise from nearly 900 guns was a crescendo of sound that made the air vibrate. The muzzle flashes lit up a cloudless black night. 20 minutes after this opening barrage, the infantry from 5 divisions and a Free French brigade crossed their start lines. Montgomery had been correct in his assessment. A turning-point battle of the war had commenced, and the eyes of the world were turned to this life-and-death struggle in North Africa. 20 minutes after the sound of the guns shredded the night air, the first enemy artillery rounds passed over Lieutenant General Bernard Freyberg's forward headquarters. The GOC of the 2nd New Zealand Division had just received news that the infantry are off. Both brigades are away to a good start. General Freyberg turned to his GI, the principal staff officer, and remarked, "If there was ever justice in a cause, this is it. I don't think the Itties will stick it, and I don't think the Boche will either. They didn't in the last war. Auchinleck could have won the war by putting in Blamey instead of Ritchie. Mind you, this is going to be a stiff fight." Freyberg was right, but this had also been anticipated by Montgomery. That day, Montgomery, no stranger to the cost of large-scale set-piece battles, had written in his diary a grave reality. "The battle will be expensive, as it will really become a killing match. I consider that the dogfight of the crumbling operations may last for a week, during which time we shall never let go our stranglehold. I have estimated for 10,000 casualties in this week's fighting. All we need now is average luck and good weather." Both Freyberg and Montgomery were correct. The 8th Army had a stiff fight ahead in what would become a real killing match. But this October Battle of El Alamein would be the turning point military action of the North African campaign.